students. This is Mrs. Harper Havens, and one of my favorite things to do to encourage and teach reluctant readers how to enjoy reading is to use the Fivefinger Rule, which is based on research-based evidence practices, best practices. And basically what you're going to do is you're going to find a book that's just right for you by, first of all, doing a search, and whether that's your classroom library, that's the school library or the public library, you're going to always look for topics that interest you, or covers of books that interest you, or you're going to dive into nonfiction topics that interest you. So for example, let's say that you're really a big nonfiction person. You love stories. So you're going to go search wherever you're searching. It could even be Amazon.com. So anyway, let's say I found a book. I think somebody told me about it, and I want to make sure that my reading skills match this book, because otherwise I won't enjoy it and I'll lose interest and I'll think I'm a poor reader, and things just kind of go down from there. So first thing I'm going to do is, I love adventures, so I found this book, Treasure Island. And I know a lot about this book because my teacher talks about it a lot. And I know it's about an adventure, it's a British book, but I'm not too sure if it's going to be too easy for me or too difficult or just right. So the whole idea of finding a just right book is that you first start with your interest, not your mom's interest, not your dad's interest, not your tutor's interest, but your interest, okay? Because you're the one that's got to read the book. And there's nothing more satisfying than finding a book that's just right for you. So then the next thing you have to do is, you always want to look at the front cover, and you want to do a nice investigation. So when I look at the front cover of this, I see like a pirate, and he's looking through a telescope, and he's got a parrot on his shoulder, aye matey. And then the other thing I want to do is I want to read the back. The back sometimes is really challenging to read. So if you're stumbling on the back, you might have already found that this is just going to be a too difficult book, because oftentimes they take a quote from the book, but it's out of context, so it's a little bit more challenging. Finding a just right book means that when you have your handout and you're reading some of the book, every time you come upon a word that interferes with your comprehension, for example, you have to stop and you have to decode the word, or you've never seen this word before, you pronounce the word, but it doesn't trigger any meaning in your brain, you have to put a finger down, okay? And you want to pick a page, either the back of the book, or you want to go to the middle of the book where nobody's ever read to you before, and you want to have at least 100 words. So if it's a picture book, you got to have at least 100 words. And then you want to start reading a paragraph from the beginning, because it's kind of weird if you just dive into a paragraph in the middle. So I'm going to start reading. I'm going to hold my hand out. So we had a dreary morning's work before us, but there was no sign of any wind, and the boats had got to be out and manned, and the ship warped 3 or 4 miles around the corner of the island and up the narrow passage to the haven behind the skeleton island. I volunteered for one of the boats, which I had, of course, no business. The heat was sweltering. And then I go back and reread. I don't have to put my finger back if I can figure it out. The heat was sweltering. It makes sense in my brain. Sweltering, I know what that word means. And the gentleman grumbled fiercely over the work. Anderson was in command of my boat, and instead of keeping the crew in order, he grumbled as loud as the worst. Well, he said with the oath, it's not forever. I thought this was a very bad sign, for up to that day the men had gone briskly and willingly about their business, but the very sight of the island had relaxed the cords of discipline. All the way in, Long John stood by the steersman and cooned. I've never seen that word before. He knew the passage like the palm of his hand, and though the men in the chains got everywhere more water than was down in the chart, John never hesitated once. "There's a strong scour with the ebb," he said, "and here's passage has been dug out, in the manner of speaking, with spade." I do not understand what I'm reading, and I have 3 fingers down, and I'm going to stop there. I think this book is a little bit too challenging for me. I think in a year or two, once I develop more vocabulary and I read more books about being out at sea, the dialogue's not going to drag me down. But there's a lot of dialogue, and it's that British old dialogue. So I'm going to try something else. This is another book that I found in the library that I thought maybe I was interested in. And this book is called, it's a new book, and it's called The Wicked Deep. Okay? And the back reads like this, so I'm going to hold my hand out. The Swan Sisters arrived in Sparrow, Oregon in 1822. Marguerite, the oldest, had long auburn locks, full lips, and a sharp jaw. Aurora, the middle sister, boasted soft waves of hair and full, bright moon eyes. And Hazel, the youngest, was the plainest of the 3, with small features and hair that twisted into tumbling braids. Each was beautiful, and each was misunderstood. A year later, the townspeople executed the Swan Sisters for crimes of witchcraft, placing a curse on the small town of Sparrow, a curse that has never been broken until now. I did not put down 1 finger reading the back. And as soon as I read that, my mind is super interested because I like these kind of books, especially like around Halloween time and stuff like that. But particularly, I like these kinds of books. Okay? So far, everything looks good. The picture doesn't really give me a lot of clues. It just kind of looks witchy. So now I'm just going to break open the book, and I'm just going to read this page. Okay? I got my hand up. I start a fire in Beau's cottage. I know I shouldn't trust this feeling, this unraveling in my heart. It will only end up in a tangled heap. But I need to protect him. Watching Olivia run her fingers up, touching the sickening lamp of the dread wretched. Now this is kind of getting weird and kind of creepy, so I'm going to put a finger down. Don't let yourself care, I recite in my hand. But maybe Marguerite's words didn't stick. Maybe he resisted. I just need to keep him safe until the summer solstice. Keep him from wandering out to the sea in search of her, and then he will leave the island and this town, and we'll never see each other again. Simple, uncomplicated. I stand up once the flames have ignited over the logs, sending sparks in the cyclone of the chimney. And that's 100 words, and I'm going to stop there. I only have 1 finger down, so I think I've found a just right book. So lastly, I just want to encourage you to always, when you do go searching for books, always try and get 3 books, at least 3 books that you've read the title, maybe you know a little bit about it, you were able to read the back. And when you read at least 100 words of the book, that you only have 2 or 3 fingers down. You don't want any more down. It'll be too difficult. And you don't want it to be too easy either, although I am a big fan of reading a lot of easier books. You probably don't want to read a book where no fingers are down, because that's just too darn easy for you probably. But again, I'm a big fan of massive reading practice at an easy level that you fully get pictures inside your brain and you're super loving what you're reading. I don't mind that at all, especially series, because they always get progressively more difficult and your reading improves no matter what. So that's it for me. I hope you have a great day. Hopefully I'll see you in my class. Bye-bye.